Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and this is All Business.
We know Americans love TV. We're watching more than ever before, but not in the same way. An estimated 40 million Americans will cut the cable cord this year, and one of the companies help us break our cable habit is Roku. And there's more to Roku than a box to stream your favorite shows. The company is breaking records in content and advertising, and you know we're talking about content and how to blow up your brand. So joining us to talk about the advertising side of the business is Alison Levin, Roku's Vice President of Global Ad Revenue and Marketing Solutions. Alison, welcome to All Business.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Jeffrey.
It's good to have you. I was looking through your background, and I understand that you were the very first ad salesperson hired at the company. What was that like?
Yeah, it's been a pretty incredible 6.5 years. A job before Roku's, we were really focused on selling video advertising to major Fortune 500 clients. And they were really early in focusing on connected TV and OTT. And during my time there, I started noticing through the research that we were doing that one, OTT was growing. And this was, 2012. So this was years ago.
Way back. It was just cutting edge, bleeding edge.
before, and the players were totally different too, right? It was Crackle and iFood TV. The channels were totally different. But one, I continued to see just the overall growth of time spent was happening even back then. And then the second thing is we continued to do research, and I continuously saw that OTT performed better than desktop and mobile video. And as a sales leader, the best thing is to stand in front of a product that's superior, right? It makes your job so much easier. And so Roku had reached out to me about a business development role. And I said to them, where they were working on some of the deals with publisher partners that they were standing up. And I said, I'm not interested really in that type of role, but if you guys are going to start a sales organization to sell advertising, like that's an area that I think I can help you a lot with. And there's a credible opportunity. And so, the rest is history. At the time, we were a tiny room of 7 or 8 people. It was right above a Sleepy's on 34th Street. The last person out set the alarm and took the garbage out. So we were definitely part of a larger company. Roku was established already, but the ad business was certainly a startup. So it's been quite an amazing journey. And our team's charter today, or really since we started, was just to help brands connect to the 51 million active households and over nearly 150 million consumers across the platform. So whether that be the Coca-Colas of the world, the Fords of the world, or that's Disney Plus and building audience on those channels. And more so too is the D2C clients, the Pelotons of the world, the smaller businesses too, that want access to the television screen. So again, incredible growth. We grew again 100% year over year in the fourth quarter on video impressions served. And so it's been an incredibly fun journey.
Well, and you've kind of become the big gorilla. I mean, when you think about, the boxes and being able to serve streaming TV, a lot of people would think, hey, Apple's the big one, right? But I can tell you, we're C-Suite TV is on Roku, it's on Apple, it's on, all of the different boxes that are out there, and lots of other places as well. Even in elevators and buildings, you'll see a C-Suite TV. But I will tell you, our number one is Roku. And we see more people watching there than anywhere else. And so hats off to you for building up a great brand. Yeah,
it is interesting. Like especially when we started the ad business, we would go into agencies and clients and say, who here has a Roku? And almost everyone at that point early on had Apple TV. But the reason was it was so coastal. It was the New York and the LA groups that, were Apple junkies, where what was happening was the middle of America was all falling in love with their Roku devices. And we moved beyond the pucks and sticks that I think a lot of people know about Roku. And we created TV integrations a little over 6 years ago. And then the business just continued to skyrocket from there. So now, when we go into rooms with agencies and clients, the vast majority, and we just, started the call today, like I love my Roku. I use it all the time. Like it's just now it's a household name where people really do have an emotional attachment to their Roku device, which of course makes my job a lot easier.
How's COVID helped you this year in terms of, a lot of people had downturns in businesses, but many businesses, including ours at the C-Suite Network, we had record growth, certainly for our content, we've had record growth. How's it been for Roku?
Yeah, I mean, there's three different sides of the business and how we make money. One is we have a team that, just sells devices, works on TV integrations to get more active households. And our belief is that all TV will be streamed and connecting all consumers with the ability to stream. Then there's the content side of our business, which is, the relationships that we have with the major channel partners, and the more streaming, the more subscribers, the more money Roku makes on that end. And then the third side of the business, the one I run, is the advertising business. So right when COVID hit, number one and number two accelerated. People went out and got a Roku device. People cut the cord because of economic uncertainty. They also had the time to figure out how to cut the cord. Live sports went away. And so their need to get a device increased. So we saw that accelerate.
And have on-demand content, right? I mean, on-demand content being the key to watch it when you want to watch it. If you want to sit down and watch all 8 seasons of Downton Abbey 2 times in a row, you can do that if you'd like, right?
Exactly. And we all had endless time, right? To at home. I mean, also needed to figure out how to entertain kids or to work out, right? So all of these things, you relied more heavily on content or on streaming than ever before. And so the content side too, same way, subscriptions. And I think you probably saw, everyone saw this in the market, an increase in Netflix users, an increase in Disney Plus users, that increased. Right as COVID hit, the ad business had the same reaction. I think the market had a very immediate, where people's creative was wrong. If I'm, TGI Fridays, I can't be advertising. Go to my TGI Fridays at the end of March, early April. But then what we saw was, as brands took a step back, reassessed what their creative should be, and got back into market, they came back to streaming before they came back to linear. It's a more effective medium. You could target to the right audience. You can measure the results. It's more flexible. You could turn it on or off on any given day, which people needed. Every state had a different policy that they were enforcing. So a restaurant company needed the ability to turn it on, turn it off, have different creative messaging. So we saw in the third quarter our largest ever year-over-year growth in new advertisers on the platform ever. And that's including early on in the business when we were just in hyper growth mode. All these clients who were late to start with streaming looked at the ecosystem, saw streaming was booming, saw linear was declining, saw a world without live sports or new programming, and invested in streaming. And then what we see is, once they come to the platform and spend TV budgets, which is $1 million, their retention rate's 96% plus. So it just brought this whole new cohort of advertisers to the platform.
People love data and ratings. How do you use data in your ad sales? I'd like to know about that. How are you? Because you just mentioned something. You said something about being able to target in one state or another. We find with podcast advertising and with digital streaming ad, you can actually pick cities, you can pick geographies, you can pick, pick counties, you can do a lot of different things with that. You used to be able to do more on broadcast. Can you do that as well in the streaming?
Yeah, data is the number one key component of why this platform is so powerful. And it shows up in 2 key ways. One is how you find the right audience at the right moment, leveraging that data. And then the second is measurement and making sure that your advertising is working. So taking a step back on how those two, like some examples of how that comes to life. One is, because we are integrated into television sets, we understand not only what's happening in streaming, but also what's happening in linear viewership. How many times did my Coca-Cola ad show up on the TV glass? Because as a consumer, you don't care where you saw that ad, or you don't remember. You just know you saw that ad X amount of times, and that's what drives your performance. So we've been really helping brands understand holistic reach and frequency, how many times they deliver an ad overall on the television screen, and then how do you actually activate against that data? So for example, if I'm Coca-Cola and I've already reached Jeffrey, your household 10 times. I simply don't want to reach your household again. It's too much. We suppress them on Roku's end. So you don't.
And then go buy somewhere else. I'll go convert the dollars over to somewhere where it's more effective on my conversion.
Exactly. But if you only hit Alison's household 3 times, we'll heavy up to make sure you hit that magical 10 number that you're trying to get. So that can you
eventually match it to, let's imagine that it's a Mercedes or whatever, and I just bought a Mercedes. Can you start matching it to the household at some point?
100%. So that is one of the most powerful things. So let's take, for example, we have a Kroger partnership.
Yeah, but by the way, the reason I want to do that is because if I'm the CMO of Mercedes, that guy already bought. I don't need to advertise him anymore. I just need to thank him, right?
Yes. I mean, for instance, an example that we use often to help make this come to life is cat litter. Mm-hmm. You either are an owner of a cat or you're not. And for broadcast advertising, for linear advertising, you are going to reach everybody, regardless if they have a cat or not. And it's not like, oh, maybe I'll buy this cat litter if I don't have a cat. You're not even paying attention to that ad.
Wasted dollars.
Wasted dollar. For us, the vast majority of the advertising that runs on the platform is targeted to the right audience, someone who has a cat, someone who's in market for a Mercedes. And then we tie it to attribution. Did you go to the dealership? Did you actually buy a Mercedes? Did you actually go to the store, the Petco store, after you saw that ad, et cetera? Our Kroger partnership is a perfect example of that, where we married together the data from the number one grocer in the US with our scale and premium inventory. And what we found is that this continues to drive really high return on ad spend for the clients. For Campbell's Snyder's, the pretzel brand within Campbell's, they saw a 250% increase of return on ad spend when targeting the right audience who was actually going to be in market for pretzels. And so we can, 1, find them, and then 2, understand attribution, and then
how do you get that data? How do you get the data? And more importantly, I'm thinking as a CMO or head of the business, how do I match that data?
So one of the most powerful things that when I found this out during the interview process of Roku, my mind was just, there's no way that this company is not going to be a leader in advertising. Mm-hmm. When a Roku device is set up, you enter your credit card information, your billing address, and your email. And the reason that you do that is the same way with your iPhone, where you have billing and you subscribe, and it's a really incredible benefit for consumers that you have that. That direct connection to a consumer is the engine of everything we do, and it allows us to match in a safe, user-compliant way to other data companies to help with one-to-one direct matching to find the right household, and then attribution on the back end.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that your email is much like a Social Security. Your phone number is much like Social Security. Of course, your credit cards, you can match that to some extent, although that's a little bit more suppressed. But if you can do that, you can be able to match people, which I think is pretty good. Hey, and Alon, some people would say, hey, sometimes that's creepy. No. It's just no different than at my local Irish pub. When I walk in, they know what I like to drink, and they have it on the counter by the time my rear end hits the chair. That's service. It's not creepy. It's just great service. And that's what this is about. Let me ask you that now that cord cutting is accelerating, do you find what you're doing easier to sell? I mean, I got to imagine in the early days, there weren't a lot of agencies returning the calls. You were really hustling. You were having to really push it. Is that different now?
Yeah. I mean, the hustle, we're still hustling every day. And from our perspective, we've only just began what we believe is the right sizing of spend to consumption, to buy TV like you watch TV. But early on, for sure, many people didn't have Roku devices. They didn't know what it was. They didn't necessarily believe that cord cutting was going to be the trend that we saw that it would be. We knew it would be because of, all the focus that we had on our business. So yeah, for sure. I mean, early on, I used to just fly across the country, plugging in Roku devices for clients and agencies and showing them where the ads were. Everyone is a case study of one, everyone. And so, I had many CMOs who, only watch live sports. And so they didn't really understand the platform or what it looked like. But the number one, even though I believe we have one of the best sales organizations out there, the number one indicator of if someone's going to be a Roku advertising customer is if they're a Roku user. If you have a Roku device and you turn it on and you see the ad experience for yourself, you understand how it looks, you understand its performance. And so the more CMOs that have Roku devices and Roku TVs, the stronger our business continues to get. So yeah, the cord cutting, accelerating has only helped us. And it's only, at this point, it's not about if you should buy Roku, it's how much of your budget needs to shift and what's the right audience, what are the right executions, video, sponsorship, and other.
That's fantastic. So live events like sports, award shows, and news has become traditional TV's big lifeblood. What kind of programming is most successful on Roku?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we started with VOD to our conversation before. A lot of people were watching on-demand content. But we are really seeing, especially in the Roku channel, which is our owned and operated channel, it's the fastest growing channel in the platform's history. And we're seeing that live sports, we're seeing that live news, we're seeing kids content, all of those are growing incredibly fast. Consumers like live, they don't like the business model of a linear package, right? So how can they get that content? Another great example of this is with the data that we have, which we talked about before, we're able to understand what happened with viewership for March Madness, comparing this year's viewership to 2 years ago, because March Madness didn't happen last year. And what we saw was streaming increased around 80% from 2019 to this year. And then linear was down 24%. So consumers are just finding new and different ways in the ways they want to watch it to watch live sports. And so there's still interest. It's just shifting how it's happening.
Now, speaking about bleeding edge, although you're becoming a little bit more traditional, what I would say by traditional is you're active in the upfronts, like the traditional TV networks. What are you guys doing for the upfronts?
Yeah, we're excited. This is our second official time being part of the new fronts, and I can't give away too much, so we'll have to tune in to check it out in early May. But I'd say our area, we're really focused on two key things. One is just eliminating any hurdles that exist for clients that will hinder their ability to move or to buy TV like they watch TV. And what we're hearing from the marketplace is advertisers want to shift about 20 to 30% of their budgets out of linear spend and into streaming to find the audience that's shifted over. So our number one focus is helping them do that. And there's a few ways that we're really focused on that. Increased measurement. So one of the largest things, or one of the main things our advertisers ask for, is to our earlier conversation around how many times did we hit Jeffrey's household, right? Like Coca-Cola wants to understand how many times did my ad hit linear, streaming, desktop, and mobile. And so we're partnering with Nielsen to help bring the first real-time analytics of 4-screen measurement to the market. And we think that's going to be really game-changing and allow brands to make really educated decisions to follow the consumers wherever they are. It shouldn't matter, that you should just find them wherever they're viewing, period. Another is increased flexibility. So, we're moving in the right direction with COVID, but brands still want that flexibility to get in and out of market as they need to. And so we're helping brands with that. And what many people don't realize is that linear has been pretty inflexible. The way they spend, cancellation is really difficult to do. You have to cancel a long time in advance. And so we're getting rid of that. And then of course, pricing, making it more effective and more efficient to get into the market earlier. And then the second key area of focus for us is products that help advertisers tell a story to Roku households, over 51 million households, beyond a 15 or 30-second spot. We believe there's a lot of ways to tell a story to consumers, and it doesn't need to be reliant just on video that's worked in linear. And that could be, brand integration with the new content that we're bringing to the Roku channel. That could be new brand experiences as a consumer enters Roku's home screen to say, hey, here are the places to watch March Madness, for instance, sponsored by TurboTax. And so we just stood up a new brand studio to help brands tell a deeper story across the platform. And there's going to be a lot more coming there too.
Very cool. Well, I've always said that if you're part of a company, you need to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, or live the brand. Now, I heard something about your daughter taking it to a whole new level because of a Roku screensaver. Can you tell me about that story?
Yeah, my daughter is now almost 3. I'm like hoping she doesn't come barging in at any moment. You know,
that's okay. You know what's it's part of the new way we do business. We love it. It's great. It's great. Yeah. You know what? We used to be at a time where we don't show them. It's part of life. It's just absolutely wonderful. So no problem.
Yeah, 100%. She's just trying to keep her off camera. She's loving the attention that she's getting. So that's so of course she grew up with the Roku device. I'm very thankful for Disney Plus coming when it did during COVID for my life.
Good timing, yeah.
Good timing. But one of the Roku screensavers is a really awesome looking aquarium. And so, when we weren't watching TV, it would just be in the background. So, one of her first words was just like fish. She's watching go through, and then it was Nemo, and then Nemo stuck. And so it was, she's been interacting with her Roku device since really, really early on. She's now a pro at finding her favorite Paw Patrol episodes and others.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Alison, for joining us. We've been talking with Alison Levin, Roku's Vice President of Global Ad Revenue and Marketing Solution. We've been talking about all things Roku. And thanks for the team putting together a great device to get a lot of great content out there, including stuff from C-Suite TV. So thanks very much for joining us right here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk about what I learned in the show. And with Alison, wow. I did not know they were able to match the data as much as they are matching the data. Of course, I should have thought about that, but I'm not a CMO like I used to be, where I would just be singly focused on that. So, that's why it's helpful that we know and collect, and you get all this data. By having data and then acting on it, you get to drive sales. Did you hear her talk about the sales driving 250% increase over their budget? Wow, holy, or something along those lines. It was big. All I know, 250%. That's big. Makes me notice. And that's what I learned right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winter-Brill. We're here with Elijah Stacy. He is the author of A Small If, the inspiring story of a 17-year-old with a fatal disease and a mission to cure it. Elijah, it's so great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So excited to meet you. The book's terrific. It's no small feat to write a book, but let alone an autobiographical book about such a serious topic and your life and the disease you were diagnosed with. So before we get into the book and the genesis of the book, can you just tell us a little bit about Duchenne disease and when you were diagnosed and kind of the 101 for everyone not familiar with it?
Yeah, so Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a muscle wasting disease that eats away a person's muscles as time goes on. So when I was 6 years old, that's when I was officially diagnosed. And what's really common when you're young is that you fall to the floor frequently, you walk on your tippy toes, you're not able to keep up with your peers, you get fatigued real easily. And so this is what really got our attention, is that, I was walking on my toes and just things that were abnormal behavior for a 5-6-year-old. Then as time goes on, patients will lose their ability to walk. They'll become completely dependent on a wheelchair. This happened to me when I was 11 years old. Now I use a power wheelchair. And then in their later teenage years, typically, they will lose mobility in their arms. So it's harder to do simple things like put on a t-shirt or raise your hand in class, things like that. And then the worst part about the disease is it is a fatal disease. Most patients pass away when they're 25 years old. And the reason this is because it attacks the heart and diaphragm, as those are muscles as well.
Wow. How old are you right now?
I'm 20 years old.
Wow. Okay. So we'll get into your story in a second and more about the book, but how common is this disease? I understand, you're not the only one in your family who has it. And I was just curious, have any of your, ancestors had? Is this something that has, been found in your family in prior generations?
Yeah, so the disease, there's about more than 250,000 people that have it worldwide. So it's a good amount of people. But in terms of the rarity of it, the statistics about it is 1 in 3,500 boys are diagnosed with this disease. And in my family, we don't really know anyone, grandparents or anything like that have a connection to the disease. So we're not really sure. But that's what we know.
Yeah. But you do have two of your brothers also were stricken with the disease?
That's correct. Yeah. So I'm the second oldest. My older brother does not have the disease. He's completely healthy. I have the disease. And then my little brother, Max, had the disease. He passed away in 2019 when he was just 14 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My little brother, Kai, he's 14 right now. He has the disease and he's in a power wheelchair.
Wow. But your parents don't have it?
My parents do not have it, no. So my mom is a carrier of the disease. It's X-linked. So the woman will actually pass it down. And that's why my older brother does not have the disease, because when during reproduction, the offspring is determined by the man. And so it's either going to be an X or Y chromosome. And so since it's X-linked, the woman puts up 2 X chromosomes. So my older brother, he got one of the good X chromosomes where I got the bad one, Max got the bad one, Kai got the bad one, right? So it's a 50-50 chance at that point, since my mom is the carrier of the disease.
Got it. Yeah. Because you're curious how it works genetically and why some get it and why some others don't. So tell us about the title of the book. What does a small if refer to, and why was that? I assume that was the impetus for writing the book and making it the title. So tell us the backstory of that phrase, a small if.
Yeah. So small if, it comes from my doctor. What happened is I was having an x-ray down on my back and my spine was becoming more and more curved, and to the point to where during this specific appointment, he told me, you're going to have spine surgery on your back. We're going to put a metal rod in your back to correct the scoliosis. I didn't want it, right? And so I'm looking over to my left. I see my mom. She's crying. My daddy has his head down. That's what he does when he's sad. My doctor's handing her a tissue. And I'm sitting there smiling because I am not accepting this news, right? I will not have the surgery. So we would go back and forth with my doctor and not really getting anywhere with him. Then eventually I just asked him, I said, let's just say that I was somehow able to reverse the current state of my spine. Could I avoid having to have the surgery then? And then he said, I don't want to give you any false hope. I've never seen this been done before. It's basically medically impossible. But because I know you, I will give you a small if. That's if you're able to do it. And so from that day forward, I went to physical therapy. I worked out every single day. I learned how to cook so I can eat healthier. I drive the wheelchair in one hand, carry the pan in the other hand. I was doing every single thing in my power to try and reverse the current state of my spine. I wanted it really bad. 3 months later, I go to my doctors. We do the x-ray. My spine is straighter. All I need was a small if. I did what didn't seem to be really possible at the time.
Wow. So just to recap, you decide to go through grueling physical therapy where the odds are against you to fix your spine, to avoid surgery, and you're successful.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow. What was that experience like? I mean, I assume it was the physical therapy must have been a very, very difficult, but it sounds like just talking to you for a few minutes. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be you with your mindset and your positive attitude.
Thank you. Well, when I was being stretched out, sometimes it was really painful, but I wanted to pull this off more than I cared about the temporary pain that I was experiencing. And that was kind of my mindset during this whole thing. I wanted it really bad for 2 reasons. One, I wanted because I don't want to have a metal rod inserted in my back. I don't want to go through the surgery. But number 2, I like when people tell me I can't do something, I can't do this or that. It gives me tons of motivation to do exactly that. And really, that's kind of the story of my life so far, is people telling me, oh, you're in a wheelchair or this or that, you can't do this, you can't do that, or you're too young to start a nonprofit or blah, blah, blah. And I always do exactly that. And I like to perform and I like to show people that they're wrong about me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just reading the book, it speaks volumes about who you are, that motivation. So tell us about the book and, you overcome this incredible feat. You prove everybody wrong. What made you want to tell your story and write the book?
Yeah. So I wanted to write this book. I started writing it when I was 16. I wanted to write it because I want to show people that they can overcome their adversity and that they can develop better mindsets. And I've learned that through all the adversity that I went through. And I really think this book will just help people become more resilient, more hopeful, inspired, more motivated to live a more fulfilling life, to really push themselves towards greatness. These are all the things that I want people to get from reading the book. This book is not a book about just the shin. It's a book about overcoming adversity. And that's why I included the life lessons in the book, the 13 life lessons that I think can really, really help people.
Curious, what was this process like for you in terms of writing the book? What did you learn from this process?
Yeah, so I started writing the book at 16, finished it when I was 17 years old, and then published it when I'm now 20 years old. And the whole process was really interesting because I learned a lot about myself. When you really write your thoughts out, it becomes more clear, right? Just thinking things in your mind and talking about them is just a lot different than how you actually write them out. So I really learned a lot about my life and really seen that all the adversity, and really got to get clear on what I've learned through my adversity. And, it's a really interesting process that I think that everybody should do. I think everybody should write and journal more and get their thoughts to be more clear.
Yeah, like what you said, writing something down, an experience you have, is very different from talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And as you just mentioned, you really see the differences in front of you tangibly. So Elijah, let's get into some of these life lessons, specifically 13 that you write about in the book. I'm just curious how you decided on 13. Were there any that you left out? How did you come up with them?
Yeah, so I came up with 13 life lessons just throughout recapping my life, the major parts of my life and the lessons that I learned through them. And that's really where I got the 13 lessons. And, for example, like one of the major lessons in my life was the self-image. When I went into the wheelchair, I had to develop a self-image of seeing myself not as a person that's, disabled or in a wheelchair, but really see myself as somebody that's smart, confident, and capable of doing things. And when I viewed myself that way, it led to people viewing me that same way, because how you see yourself is how you're going to act, and how you act is how other people are going to see you. Another lesson as well that I learned is the adapter's mindset, being willing and being creative to adapt to anything that life throws at you. And I had to learn that by going into the wheelchair and transitioning to a new set of challenges in life. And so that's where the life lessons come from, is just reflecting on major parts of my life and then putting those into lessons that I think other people can learn and that they can benefit from.
And what do you say to people who want to follow these lessons, but they have setbacks, right? And they're trying to follow the formula, but life gets in the way and you got to take 2 steps backwards. I'm sure that happened in your journey. So what's your advice when that happens and you stumble a bit?
Well, I think when we're faced with adversity, I think that every adversity is really just an opportunity to improve your character and to be a stronger person. So I don't really think that a setback is necessarily a negative thing, but more of an opportunity. When you get a setback, you kind of got to take a step back and realize, okay, what is going on here? How can I use this to my advantage? And that's what I've learned, when it came to doing my reversing the current state of my spine back when I was 16 years old. I had to step back and I had to think about, well, this right here is an opportunity to persevere through this and to do something that no one thinks I can do. And by doing it, it's going to prove to myself that there's really nothing that I cannot do in this life if I put my mind towards it.
Yeah. I mean, you said it, using a setback to your advantage, where some people would say, I'm going backwards. You're seeing it as a positive. I'm actually going to get back to where I was and even farther, maybe from when that setback happened. I mean, and just talking to you, Elijah, you have such a positive mindset. Obviously, the glass is, I would say, even more than half full. Where does that come from? Have you always been that way? Are your brothers that way? How do you explain it?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I got to give credit to my parents for sure. My parents have instilled in me this type of mindset from a very early age. They never have let me use the wheelchair or disability or disease as an excuse. You're going to be great, Elijah, and whatever you do, and whatever you choose to do, you're going to be great at it. We expect greatness out of you. I was raised by a head football coach, and I'd follow him around when I was like 4 years old, right? As early as 4 years old. So I think that had a lot to do with the psychology that I have today. So I have to give a lot of credit to my parents. And then the other thing too is I just don't see the logic in being, pessimistic. I see the logic in being a realist, but I also see the logic in being an optimist, because optimism leads to things, being innovated, to things being accomplished, to hope, which is super, super important, especially during the time that we live in. The world needs more hope. It needs more inspiration. It needs more optimism, right? We can get through this. We can get through these challenges. So I think it just comes from a combination of those 2 things.
Elijah, one of the lessons that really inspired me and really struck a chord with me is when you talk about leadership. I think it was lesson 11 out of the 13. And going into it, if someone asked me what leadership was, I would think leadership is being a leader to many, right? A leadership to an organization, to a group of people. But right at the top of the chapter, you talk about how it's important to be a leader to someone, just one person. And I thought that was such a unique spin, because that's not typically how we, think about leadership. So your message is it's quality, not quantity. Tell us about that lesson.
Yeah, so the idea of being a leader to somebody is that you really are going to be a leader to somebody in your life, and you should be, right? You should find somebody that you can lead. And it doesn't mean that you have to be like the president of the United States or the CEO of a huge company or anything like that. It could just be to one person. For me, for example, I realized this when my little brother Kai was diagnosed with the disease. I realized that I'm going to be a leader specifically just for him, in the sense that I have the disease and I got to show him how to overcome this disease and show him the path that I went on so that he can go through it as well and overcome all the challenges that come along with having a Duchenne. And so really that's where the lesson, be a leader to somebody, comes from. And I think it's a really powerful thing, because being a leader really teaches you a lot about yourself and really improves your character. And I think that's a really important thing as well, is your character.
Yeah. I love the way you just describe it. It's not this insurmountable feat. Oh, I have to, go on a process to become a leader and get there. And it's a journey. You talk about, keeping it simple and the effect you can have. But I also like how you just mentioned how it affects yourself, being a leader, how it changes you, which is so important. Another lesson, Elijah, that struck me was lesson 9, dichotomy of control. And you talk about the difference between controlling something versus influencing it. Can you tell us about that dichotomy, and is there one that's more important than the other?
Yeah, so lesson 9, dichotomy of control, is actually from ancient Stoicism. It's a philosophy. And what it says is that we should focus on what we can control and disregard what we cannot control. One of the keys here is that a majority of things are not in your control. And when you really learn that and accept that, a lot of the stresses of life go away and a lot of your anxiety. So it's a really, really powerful lesson. But now here's the key thing. You have to distinguish between controlling something versus influencing it. For example, controlling would be to determine the outcome, right? So let's say I have somebody that I want to be, to make them my friend. I could be very nice to them. I could be very polite, take an interest in them. But at the end of the day, they might not like me because they don't like anybody. And so that's out of my control. So I don't have to worry about the final outcome. But what I can do is influence them, like I said, by being nice and polite and whatever. That's within my control, is what I do, right? That's my influence. So that's the difference between the two. And when you really learn that, a lot of your problems in life go away. A lot of the mental barriers seem to go away.
Yeah, again, it seems like something we all should know and do practice. But when you read it, it's like that light bulb aha moment, like influence versus control. Really just very insightful. Elijah, in the book, you also spend time talking about comfort zones and specifically expanding your comfort zone. But you have a unique take on it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I think that we got to just change the frame of how we look at it. You hear people say a lot that you need to do things that are not in your comfort zone, get out of your comfort zone, stuff like that. And I agree with them. But I think the way that we should look at it is by expanding your comfort zone, because when you do things that you're uncomfortable with, you eventually become comfortable with them. So all you're doing is just expanding your comfort zone. And one of the ways I like to do that on a day-to-day basis is I like to take cold showers, ice cold showers. And I like to visualize things that I'm working on. For example, if I'm going to give a public speech, I'll visualize the whole speech, the stage, the crowd, everything, while the cold water is running on me. And that really gets me comfortable with the whole speech and everything that I'm going to be doing. And so really, I'm just expanding my comfort zone. So that's where that's what the lesson is about.
Finally, the other lesson I did want to point out, again, this one struck me as well. Lesson 10, you talk about practicing gratitude. Because gratitude, when you're practicing gratitude, you're in a state of peace. How did you discover that?
Yeah, so when you think about it, when you're really grateful for something, right, within that exact moment, you're not really going to be depressed or anxious when you're really just focusing on the things you're grateful for, and that's where you get that that state of peace. And the way I discovered it is when I broke my leg, I broke my femur when I was in the 7th grade. And the paramedics came over and I was in a lot of pain. But when they came over and helped me and stuff like that, I was really genuinely grateful that we have, paramedics that are so thoughtful and caring and that can come over. I mean, I couldn't imagine, honestly, what have happened if I did not have the paramedics to be able to come over, and the medicines that we have and the doctors that we have and just how things work. That made me truly grateful. And really the way that you do this is you contrast, right? You imagine what things would be like if you didn't have them. So for example, a person in your life, you want to be more grateful for them being in your life. Imagine them not being in your life and really visualize it, really experience and think about what it would be like. Don't just, oh yeah, I'm grateful for them, but really go through the process of thinking what it would be like if you did not have that person. You'll be grateful for them.
I mean, just hearing the story about the ambulance, it's such a mature mindset that you have, kind of seeing, being aware of being grateful for what, it's coming to you in the midst of a horrible injury. We're out of time, but on a final note, there's so many people. Bullying is such a hot topic. I don't know if that's the right wording, but it's more prevalent than ever, I feel, in my personal opinion, bullying on all levels with social media. What is your advice to people? Because clearly, you've mentioned in the book how you were bullied and you spun a negative into a positive. You use that negativity rather and turned it into motivation. Can you give everybody, final thought, a few tips to do that for those experiencing bullying and how they can flip it around the way you did, Elijah?
Well, if someone's bullying you, just don't pay attention to them. Just ignore them. They're not worth your time. That's not in your control. And honestly, it's a compliment. That's what I think, at least. When people bully you, it means that you're doing something right. They want to try and tear you down. And if they have to pull you down, that means you're already up. So I don't worry about bullies. I actually think of them as a compliment. And if they're doubting you, I wouldn't necessarily say that's bullying, but if they're doubting you, that's free motivation. I call it rocket fuel in the book. That's rocket fuel to do exactly what they say you cannot do. You think that you can do something, they think that you can't. Prove to yourself that you're right about your capabilities and they're wrong. And I think it's just great motivation. I personally love when people doubt me and say I can't do things. So that's what I would say about bullies and doubters and just people that are throwing negative energy your way.
Yeah, I've actually always said that myself. If someone is talking negatively about you, I see it as, wow, thank you for, there's so many things to talk about. You're taking your time and your breath to focus on me.
Yeah.
Wow. It's really not necessary, but thank you. I'm honored that you're, kind of exactly what you just said. So Elijah, before we wrap up, I just want to say it's been such a joy chatting with you. You're so intelligent, so articulate. You really have such a unique insight into everything you've been through, and the way you communicate it in your book is so relatable. So I just want to say thank you, and my hat's off to you. Will there be another book? I hope so, because I'd like to read about more lessons.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a few more books in story. I want to help people overcome their adversity and live more fulfilling lives. So I definitely think that there's all types of thoughts and things I want to put out in the world. So I definitely think that there'll be more books coming soon.
Well, we can't wait. We look forward to it. And thank you again for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you'd like more information on the book, just check out our website. It's c-suitebookclub.com. That's c-suitebookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.
Welcome to C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg. They say the key to buying and selling real estate is location, location, location. That's why I'm excited to have real estate sales trainer and market disruptor Steve Trang here. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much for having me. This is an honor.
Well, it's great to have you here. And for salespeople out there, what is the state of the real estate market now? Or is it too localized to make a blanket statement?
I would say overall, what we're seeing across the country is that if you're looking to sell right now, you're in a really good spot. You're in the driver's seat. But if you're trying to buy right now, it's really tough. There's been a lot of, programs, government intervention, whatever, to make it really easy to buy. And because of that, there's so much demand. There's not enough homes for sale.
And what is the most important skill in sales? And do you think it's teachable?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the most important skill is just the ability to actively listen and empathize and understand the other person. Really see the world through their eyes and feel how they feel, and be able to articulate what's going on in their world and explain it back to them. And I think that what happens a lot in sales and a lot of sales people is they like talk. They love talking. They love the sound of their voice, and they may even overpromise, right? And really, if you look at what most people want, just human beings in general, we want to be loved, we want to be appreciated, we want to be understood. And the best way to do that is to actively listen.
And you said that sales is similar to seeing a doctor. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think if you were to go to see your doctor today because you had some back pain, and you said, you know what, this is perfect. I just got an opening this afternoon at 3:00. Why don't you come back and we'll operate? Would you get a second opinion? You might freak out a little bit. But if he asked you, well, tell me what's going on with your back. How long has it been hurting? Where does it hurt exactly? What have you tried to do about it? Did that work? Have you tried anything else? What would happen if we can't help you, right? These are all important questions as part of the diagnosis process. And so for us in sales is we're going to ask the same questions. What's going on? Why am I here? What have you tried to do about it? How long has it been going on? Did that work? Have you tried anything else? What's going to happen if things stay the same? What happens if we can't help you? And something that we teach all the time is if you want to get paid like a doctor, you better start asking questions like a doctor.
All right, and you've also said that assuming leads to more sales. What do you mean by that? Because that seems counterintuitive.
It does seem totally counterintuitive. And I think what happens is we've been taught our whole lives, you don't assume, right? You just don't make assumptions. But what we found as far as communication styles is the more you assume out loud, the more you're going to be able to make progress in communication. So if you assume out loud and you're right, they'll agree and they'll acknowledge, and you know exactly where they stand. But if you assume out loud and you're wrong, they'll happily correct you. So no matter what, you know exactly where you are and where you stand. And people can't help but correct when you make the wrong statement. Just look at Reddit, you look at YouTube, you look at Facebook forums. Anyone makes a statement that you don't agree with, you got all the time in the world to correct them.
Very true. And then finally, you're also a media player in addition to selling real estate. You have a podcast, you have a network. How does this help your sales production?
Well, the great thing is because of networking, we just get a lot more opportunities. And with a lot more opportunities, we get a lot more repetitions. And the best way to get better at something is to practice it more. And so we just get a lot more opportunities because of our connections. And because of that, we're able to improve on sales, which is what we're obsessed about, the science of sales.
All right, well, thanks a lot for coming on and talking about it. And thank you for watching C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg.